I guess in this episode of Family Guy, Peter once pretends to be racist to get out of jury duty. And he's like, oh, that's a good idea.
Welcome to Allegedly with Bo and Ryan, the only entertainment and law podcast that brings you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Allegedly.
I'm Bo Bowen.
And I'm Ryan Schmidt.
You're listening to Allegedly with Bo and Ryan. We're coming to you from our law offices in beautiful, historic Savannah, Georgia, where we'll be chatting about pop culture, hot legal topics in the news, and doing our best to change the way people think about the law and lawyers.
But first, a little about us. Bo is so respected that Hell's Angels jump off their motorcycles and walk them past his house.
And Ryan doesn't like to brag, but a recent archaeological dig came across prehistoric footprints that led out of Africa into all parts of the world. On close inspection, it turned out that the prints were his.
Together, we are Savannah's consummate renegade legal titans.
And the only corporate and entertainment lawyers in the free world who have never lost a single case. Allegedly. Well, welcome to another episode of Allegedly with Bo and Ryan. We appreciate you tuning in for another installment of all things law and entertainment. And today's topic is one of our latest obsessions, jury duty.
Yes, and we're not talking about actual jury duty, or as we like to call it, the great American excuse to get out of work for $2 a day. We're talking about the new quasi-reality show on Amazon Prime / Freevee. Bo, for those who haven't seen this show, what is it all about?
Well, jury duty is unlike anything I've ever seen on TV before. I've been told it's kind of like a show called Joe Schmo, although I've never heard of that, but it's amazing. All right, so it's essentially a documentary that follows a real guy named Ronald Gladden as he serves on a jury in a civil case. But there's an important twist. Ronald has no idea that the entire thing is completely fake and set up just to watch him and his reactions. Every single person involved is an improv actor. Every other juror, the judge, the bailiff, the lawyers, even the 20-so fake witnesses giving phony testimony. And to make it even wilder, the even Westworld actor James Marsden is on the jury panel. And he's basically acting like this hilariously kind of narcissistic, self-absorbed version of himself. I mean, he's fantastic. I mean, it's filmed in a real courtroom, and every single detail is set up to fool Ronald into believing he is a real juror in what is undoubtedly one of the wildest and weirdest court cases in history. I mean, what they pull off with this show is absolutely amazing.
Oh, 100%. And it's not like they just did it one day in one hearing that happened once. And they did this over, 3 weeks or something like that?
Yeah, I think it was 17 days total.
It was unbelievable. Yeah, and I just loved how funny, how charming the show was. But also, really, you got to imagine what they did to fool Ronald. It really worked. I mean, a lot of people would have fallen for it just because of how much they did that was actually accurate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, every single little detail they thought of. It was truly impressive.
So this being Allegedly with Bo and Ryan, a podcast about the intersection of law and pop culture, I thought it'd be fun to talk about what the show did right and what it reflects on the legal system.
Well, before we get started on that, I mean, I think it is important to note, because before people think, why do I want to watch a guy sitting, on jury duty? It's semi-scripted, and it's from the creators of The Office. So obviously it heavily favors entertainment, over by the book legal accuracy. But that having been said, the show actually does a really amazing job of staying faithful to the real experience of jury duty, just in a really entertaining and funny way. I mean, for starters, I gotta say, the actor who plays the judge is just pitch perfect.
Oh, I completely agree. One of my favorite parts of the whole show is the actor who plays the judge. I mean, what do you like so much about him?
Well, okay. Yeah. As a lawyer, when you go into a courtroom, yeah, you've got to kind of be, the dominant personality, but there is no question the judge is in control of that courtroom.
Absolutely.
And this actor did a masterful job of that. So, and think about it. If your idea is to convince this sort of unsuspecting juror that this absurd fake trial is real, you have to start with a believable judge. And this guy was great. I mean, it was just right. First of all, the age was right. His look was right. And, you're not surprised at the end when you find out, he was not a judge, but he has been an actual attorney for the last 40 years in Chicago.
So he's been in some courtrooms.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he just had that perfect balance, of being authoritative, but sometimes moody, other times compassionate and understanding, and a lot of judges really do act that way. I mean, they're not mean or unprofessional most of the time, but they can be very direct because they want to protect their caseload, their calendar. They run a pretty tight ship. And interesting side note on that, Ryan, you may not realize this, but I found out later that the actor that plays the judge is actually the father of Ike Barinholtz.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, one of our favorite actors.
That's amazing. So, I mean, the first thing that really impressed me with this show was this actor. And I thought when we were looking him up, I thought he had to have been a real judge. I would have 100% believed that. So I have one. You're always asked by friends and family, okay, I just got summoned to jury duty, right? How on earth do I get out of jury duty? That's always the first question, right?
Exactly.
And a lot of people just want to show up, do the bare minimum, get excused, and go home. And the show goes into a character named Noah trying to find an excuse to get out of jury duty because he wants to go on a trip with his girlfriend. And I mean, everybody has some reason why they don't want to be in jury duty.
And actually, I have a trip scheduled with my girlfriend is a pretty common excuse that you hear in real life.
Right. and it gets pretty funny. He's talking about this trip and he says, but this is a really, really important trip for me and my girlfriend. We've never been alone, unsupervised, without parents. It gets like really cringy. And he's trying to plead to the judge and the judge's like, I'm not buying it. So let's set that up a little bit. He's in the waiting room ready to be called into the jury box. And he's talking to Ronald, again, the one guy in this whole production who isn't an actor. And he's saying, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Noah. What do people usually say to get out of jury duty? And Ronald, not being an actor, could have said absolutely anything. And he would have had to run with it, right? And he says, I don't really know, but I guess in this episode of Family Guy, Peter once pretends to be racist to get out of jury duty. And he's like, oh, that's a good idea. So in voir dire, the judge is asking if anybody has any reason why they can't serve on the jury. One lady stands up. She looks like she's 100. And she's just like, not my thing. And the judge is like, ma'am, I'm just happy. Like, I'm just glad you showed up today. Have a good one. You're dismissed. And she gets to go home. And then anybody else. And so this guy, Noah, says, this is a really big, important trip. I want to be with my girlfriend, all the stuff. And says, I'm sorry, sir. This personal trip, just, it's not going to work. Well, we've got a flight to Cabo and it's a big vacation and we'd have to miss that. The judge says, no, like, is there anything else that would prevent you from serving on this jury? And he's getting really nervous and he's stuttering, maybe. And he looks at Ronald from across the courtroom and they've had this conversation. And he's like,
and Ronald is shaking his head.
Like,
No.
Please don't do this. And he says, I'm racist.
So great.
It's so great. And everybody, even the judge, I'm sorry, you said what? He said, yeah, I'm racist. And he said, I'm sorry, that was stupid. I shouldn't have said that. Somebody told me to say that. And the judge even like starts snapping at him a little bit. He says, who told you to say that? And it gets really, really uncomfortable. You think for a second that he's going to rat out Ronald, and Ronald's eyes are like bulging out of his head. But it was just so good, so funny, so spot on. And it actually reminded me of one of the crazier courtroom experiences I ever witnessed. This was in a federal courthouse in Nashville, Tennessee. And anytime you've got federal court, it is just a way more strict court, right?
Oh, yeah. Any lawyer will tell you federal judges don't play.
They don't play. They're nominated by the president. They're confirmed by Congress. It's a different level. So this one guy is talking to the judge, and there, mostly the judge is the one who's doing jury selection, asking each of the jurors questions, and it can get pretty intense. So this one guy first shows up, and the courthouse has all these rules. Outside there's got to wear a collared shirt, and you got to tuck your shirt into your pants, and you got to look a certain way. This guy shows up, t-shirt, shorts, sneakers, just a ponytail. He's already in trouble, right? And the judge says, "Is there anything that's going to keep you from serving on this jury?" Guy takes a deep breath and says, "Yes, Your Honor. I'm in a really tough situation here. I've been losing sleep. It's my girlfriend." And the judge says, "Well, what's going on with your girlfriend?" He says, "Yeah, she's just been really having a hard time paying her rent, and she might get evicted at the end of the month." And the judge is just looking at him like, "That's going to prevent you from serving on this jury?" And he's giving him every single out. He's like, yeah. I mean, I won't be present here. I'll just be thinking about her the whole time. And he's like, "I mean, you're her boyfriend. You can't pay her rent. If she gets kicked out, she can't sleep at your house. No, Your Honor. No. This is not going to happen." So the judge finally hits his limit, and he says, "Well, I appreciate your candor. I think you're right that you'll probably not be present enough to, serve on this jury and to actually help, the parties reach a final verdict here. But, I'm concerned that if I let you go, you're never going to learn the full scope of the legal process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you ordered to stay here for the entire duration of this trial as a spectator." Right? And you're going to sit either here in the front row of the of the courtroom or in the bench outside. And if you leave one of those two areas without letting me know, I'll hold you in contempt of court and throw you in jail.
Wow.
The judge then breaks us all for lunch. The guy is sitting outside. The judge didn't tell him you can have your lunch now, so he just sat there for the next 2 hours. So yeah, be careful messing with judges.
Yeah, federal judges definitely don't play. So and going back to that scene with Noah where he says he's racist. There's a great scene after that where afterwards they pick the jury and he apologizes to everyone on the jury panel and says, "Look, I'm not racist. I just said that to try to get out of jury duty." And a black woman looks up and says, "Well, how about next time? Just don't say that." So it really is a great show. And another thing I think that really added to the realism of it is the fact that they were able to film in a real courthouse. I mean, that's just unbelievable because you would think, how could they do that? Because, courthouses are in use all the time. Well, they got lucky, okay, because they held it in Huntington Park Superior Court just outside Los Angeles. And the reason they were able to use a real courthouse was because that courthouse had built a new courthouse in that county, and that courthouse was actually just sitting there vacant. In fact, it had just recently been used before they filmed as a haunted house. So according to the production team, the crew shows up to set up. There's no electricity. There's spider webs, fake blood, zombies everywhere, but they go in, rehab the entire thing, and turn it within a couple of weeks into a real functioning courthouse again. So just the setting itself gives you the feeling of a very real court case.
Absolutely. I mean, you couldn't just put it in some office park and say, yeah, this is the court.
Right, exactly. It was very well done. And the other part that I thought was great, so funny, there's this hilarious scene where the lawyer for the defendant promises to blow the jurors' minds with an amazing animation during his opening statement, okay? And then he promptly spends 2 full days just trying to get his computer to connect to the monitor so the jury can see it. I mean, maybe not to that extreme, but that's actually not an uncommon thing to happen. I have definitely seen technology issues hold up trials, and it is excruciating.
And it was so funny watching the lawyer walk through this because he was trying to prep the jury and the judge for what was taking so long. So he was kind of speaking out what was happening. Okay, connect to Wi-Fi, enter credential. And he was just kind of step by step, unable to connect to it was just so funny.
And in the show, they built into it that the lawyers were very mismatched. And that's actually pretty realistic too. The lawyer for the plaintiff was well prepared, presented everything professionally and just perfectly, was confident, exactly the type of lawyer you would want arguing for your side. The defendant's lawyer, on the other hand, what's the word I'm looking for there, Ryan? I'm going to say train wreck.
Absolutely. Another thing I really, really enjoyed about this show and what I thought it got right, again, we're talking about creating that atmosphere with which somebody would believe that they're in a real courtroom setting, was Bailiff Nicky, the bailiff who oversaw the proceedings.
She's great.
Again, no matter what happens in the show, that courtroom has to be right. The case itself can be the most wild case, but if the judge, the courtroom, and the bailiff aren't believable, the whole thing just immediately falls apart. And she was so good. She was very much like a TSA agent who will yell at you while you're getting your liquids, say, laptops and liquids out of the bag. She was very authoritative. And at one point, people were talking and she said, I will arrest all of you. And you're like, oh, damn, I got to listen to this one. But that's the thing about real life bailiffs. They say that, and the judge is about to come out and they'll say, everybody put your phone on silent. If it rings, I'll take it. If it rings again, I'll arrest you. And you're like low-key nervous about bailiffs all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting there going, what if there's an Amber Alert?
last thing you want to do. And at the end of the show, what was so nice to see was even after Ronald was told that this whole thing was a ruse, he goes up to Bailiff Nicky and he's like, wait, but you're a real cop, right? And of course she has to say, no, I'm an actor too.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. But, as many things as they did right, I mean, there were a few things that would never happen in real life. I mean, first and foremost, you would never, ever, ever get to film or interview a jury during the course of a trial.
Right.
That would just never happen. And the show, I mean, it does try to kind of acknowledge that problem. And it explains that they had unprecedented access granted to the film documentary crew. But yeah, again, in real life would never happen. You'd be very concerned because that process, you're not allowed to prejudge until all the evidence is in. And that process of sitting down with the documentary crew, especially together like they were doing, it would influence the jurors. It would influence the public. It would influence the attorneys. It would influence everybody. You wouldn't be able to do it. A judge would never allow it in a million years. I mean, just think about what would happen in real life, Ryan. If a rogue juror decided to just give an interview to a reporter in the middle of a trial about everything that's going on in the courtroom. I mean, not only would they be immediately dismissed from the jury, but, the case would almost certainly be a mistrial. And on top of that, they would probably be in jail.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And another thing that I think they kind of brushed over, but for entertainment purposes, it was so good, was James Marsden's character, right? So James Marsden is a very well-known actor. He was Cyclops in X-Men. He's in Westworld, as you mentioned. He's in Hairspray. He's people see him, even if they don't know his name. Oh yeah, I remember him in that thing. He's very recognizable. And it'd be very unlikely for a famous actor to serve on a jury, even as an alternate that he was in. Again, the judge and the parties want to minimize anything that might actually distract from the trial itself, the facts and the law that the jury must consider to reach a verdict. And while Marsden isn't like Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio, many people would definitely know who he is and have seen some of his work and probably get distracted, right?
Sure.
So the judge, pretty hilariously, discounts the argument. James Marsden wants to get out because he's got this big fake movie audition that he's got to do. And he says, Judge, I think I'm going to be a distraction. I'm a recognizable public figure. And the judge, just as quickly says, with respect, I don't recognize you. And even the judge pulls up Ronald, again, the real guy. And he says, do you recognize him? And Ronald says, well, first, Your Honor, I didn't, but now I do. And he's like, well, what has he been in? And he says, he's been in X-Men, he's been in this and that. And James Marsden's like, dude, never start with X-Men. And it's a good point. Celebrities are not exempt from getting summoned for jury duty. It happens all the time, but most of them are going to get excused for cause just because of how distracting they could be. And I actually found this whole article of different times that celebrities have shown up to jury duty, and people are taking their pictures, asking for autographs, counsel's coming up to them, and it gets messy, right?
Oh, for sure.
But I found one instance where Oprah actually served as a juror on a murder trial in 2004.
Wow.
And it didn't have a happy ending. They all convicted this guy. So it does happen.
Yeah, well, no one really, other than if you're a convicted felon or you're over the age limit, anybody and everyone gets called for jury duty. There are no automatic passes. Lawyers get called for jury duty. Judges get called for jury duty. As you know, Ryan, just about 2 months ago, I got called for jury duty. And most of the time you think, as a lawyer, they're probably just going to cut me right off. That was not my experience. So it's a little bit different when you're talking about a civil trial versus a criminal trial.
Okay.
In a criminal trial, it's very unlikely that the defense attorney is, the defense attorney is definitely going to want a jury on it, but there's no way the district attorney is going to want a lawyer. And the reason is because a lawyer understands what a tremendously high burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt really is.
Sure.
So they don't want that. So you're almost certainly going to get cut off of a criminal trial. Civil trial's a little different. A civil trial, and in this one, it dealt with, the one I got called for, it dealt with a lot of property, a lot of very complex kind of tax and monetary issues. And, you could tell the lawyers were kind of thinking, maybe a lawyer on the jury wouldn't be a bad thing. Maybe, that would help the other jurors kind of understand some of these issues. So I was there for 2 days, and I really thought I was going to get picked until the lawyer for the defendant asked one question. Okay.
Oh, what was this?
So it was a divorce case, but it was an older couple, and they were dealing only, like I said, only with property issues, money and property. That's it. So the lawyer for the defendant looked at me and said, by the way, I know you're an attorney here in Savannah. Do you know the attorney for the plaintiff? And I said, yes, I do. Well, how long have you known him? I said, I've known him for over 20 years. And he said, well, are y'all friends? Do you have a good relationship with him? I said, well, when I got a divorce, he advised my ex-wife. So that wasn't great. So that lawyer then immediately said, yeah, we'll excuse this guy.
Oh, man. So close.
So, yeah, but it does happen.
Well, what's another thing that happened in the show that wouldn't fly in real life?
Well, going back to that scene with the defendant's lawyer trying to get the video to work, first of all, there's no way in hell a judge is going to let a lawyer try to get a video to play for 2 full days. That's just not going to happen. Right. And then about 2 minutes, a real judge is going to shut that shit down, just proceed without it, counsel. But it does on the show. It pays off perfectly, though, because when he finally does get the video to play after all of this buildup and all of this anticipation, it ends up being about a 3-second long animation of a guy walking that looks so bad. I mean, it straight up looks like it was created by like a cat walking across a keyboard. I mean, it's all like glitchy and the guy's like looks like he explodes after like 2 steps. I actually read later that the actors on the jury had not seen the video before it actually got played in court.
Amazing.
And they all, when they saw that for the first time, every one of them just immediately cracked up. And they actually got nervous that they might be blowing this whole show, but it worked because that video would have made anyone laugh. I mean, it certainly did me.
It was so funny. And if you remember, it was supposed to be on a TV. He breaks the TV. Then he puts it on a little iPad and he's having everybody huddle around this one iPad. And the judge even says, "Let me see what you just showed the jury." And it's 3 seconds of just chaos. And the judge kind of looks at him like, "What the hell was that?" And then the defendant's lawyer says, "I'm going to need to talk to my nephew."
Just amazing.
Another thing that, just wouldn't happen is this whole idea of the ineffective assistance of counsel that blows up in hilarious fashion at the end of this trial. So here, this is we've got the defendant is now bringing on their case in chief. The plaintiff's case is rested. And for days and days, you're hearing about how this defendant is this negligent employee. He's just ruined this big order for the plaintiff. And just because of that, all this reputational damage has been caused. So the plaintiff's putting witness after witness. I wouldn't hire this guy. This guy's terrible. Even his own mom is basically like, yeah, the defendant's a deadbeat, like it's really bad. So the defendant's lawyer, mid-trial, without even consulting him seemingly, just turns on the defendant while he's asking him some questions on the stands. And he's like, "I mean, you have to agree, it's pretty irresponsible for anybody to hire you, right?"
So great.
And you're terrible at any job you take, right? And the defendant's like, "Dude, what are you doing? Like, stop." And he keeps asking some more and more questions and just completely feeding into the plaintiff's case and their argument. And the defendant goes, "No, you can't do this. I've read about this. This is ineffective assistance of counsel." And everybody gets really nervous and the courtroom goes quiet.
Yeah, needle scratch from it.
Yeah, exactly. And the judge goes, whoa. This is huge allegations. I'm going to need the defendant and his counsel in chambers immediately. And so they go off and everybody's freaking out. So after some set amount of time, they come back and the judge says, "The defendant has chosen to proceed in this case pro se and represent himself, but the defendant's lawyer will serve as co-counsel," which that makes no sense. So here's why ineffective assistance of counsel just wouldn't work here legally. It's not something that you see in a civil case at all. It's actually a right that the criminally accused have to competent representation. It's closely tied to your Miranda rights, your right to counsel, among others. And if a criminally accused gets convicted, one of their appeal rights is the right to claim ineffective assistance of counsel. But it is so hard to win on. You're trying to get that sentence vacated or overturn that conviction. But in order to do that on an ineffective assistance of counsel claim, you have to prove that the attorney's representation was reasonably and objectively deficient. They did something that no other lawyer would reasonably do. But for that representation, you would have won your case.
Right.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah, that definitely not something that happens very often.
For sure.
But it does make sense, like you talked about, it only applies in criminal cases, not civil. but it kind of makes sense a little bit why that was in there, because I actually read later when reading about the show that the initial plan was to make it a criminal trial and not a civil trial. But they actually did some research and they found that in the state of California where they were filming, it's actually illegal to make someone believe they are sitting in judgment on a criminal case.
Oh, wow.
So you can do it in a civil one as long as you follow certain, kind of safeguards, but a criminal case completely off limits.
Pretty good reason to have an entertainment lawyer on your production.
Yeah, exactly. So, it was funny. They said that they were kind of joking throughout production, like season 2 of this show may well be us all on trial for doing this show.
Wow.
So, but I really can't stress enough. You really got to watch the show. What they pulled off with this is it's unbelievable. Think about it from this perspective, Ryan. Think about if you're one of the actors on the show. And as we talked about, there were dozens of them, many of whom were around Ronald almost all day, every day.
Right.
Okay. You're one of those actors. All of this time has been put in, all of this money, all of this effort, putting this show together. All of these people are involved. And if you screw up, if you say the wrong thing, if you call someone by the wrong name, if you step to the wrong place and, reveal a camera, anything, in 1 second, one mistake could blow that entire show. I mean, the whole thing could be revealed. That had to be wild for the actors.
Oh, it's so stressful, too.
That'd be like a razor's edge, man. I'd be like nervous. God, can you imagine how upset everyone would be? So the fact that they were able to get through it, and in the last show, they actually show some of the near misses they had, but, they pulled it off and it was unbelievable. And the very fact that the producers picked this guy, Ronald Gladden, to be the victim/hero of this show, was a true stroke of luck. I mean, he was so good. Apparently, he was one of thousands of people who had answered an ad on Craigslist about appearing in a documentary on jury duty. But, they just strike gold with this guy.
For sure.
He's clearly just such a nice, sweet guy. He tried so hard to do the right thing. And he was just kind. He was so supportive of everyone, no matter how wild or weird things got, and people are confessing these, deep, dark secrets to him. And he's, just, being there for them and helping them and supporting them.
Or calling somebody's ex-girlfriend and trying to plead for him to take him back.
It really was unbelievable. And the whole last episode of the show, is devoted to showing him find out the extent of the way that he was tricked, how far they had gone to put this ruse together. It honestly, it was so effective that it actually kind of fucked him up a little bit.
Oh, I bet.
I read an interview that it was, even now, he said that he's paranoid, and he's constantly questioning reality. He said, he'll go into a coffee shop, and if anything weird happens or, a server drops a spoon, he immediately is starting to look around for hidden cameras. They fooled him so completely that to this day, he still thinks he may be on a TV show. That's some Black Mirror shit right there.
Oh, for sure.
I gotta say, that show, I give it a 10 out of 10. It was so good. And while most of the things on the show clearly were very exaggerated for a comedic effect, actually pretty realistic. It will give you an idea of what jury duty is really like. There was certainly a few wonky things that would never happen in real life, but man, it is a fun show to watch.
Oh, for sure. Kind of like how fun it is to work with the Bowen Law Group and watch all your dreams come true.
Exactly, Ryan. Which is why we are the most successful lawyers in the history of human jurisprudence.
Allegedly. Well, that's our show for today. Thanks for listening to the legal mastery of the highly intelligent and easily most attractive true legal out lawyers in Savannah. And remember, the only lawyers in the free world who have never lost a single case.
Allegedly.
To continue to receive free edge of your seat legal anecdotes, mind-blowing takes on hot topics, and a general masterclass in awesomeness, please head over to thebowenlawgroup.com and see all the platforms you can subscribe on. Wow, you actually let me finish that one.
I'm not a monster.